This is totally extemporaneous. I usually have screen notes and prepare that way, and I do a lot of serious background checking. That's not happening now for the simple reason that the last video that I did, I said was going to be my last video because I felt that it was important for people to know that I'm not superimposing myself. I'm not in control. That where we are right now is that the world is in a transition and everybody is playing their part. Some people are involved in the transition because they want things to change, and some people are resisting the change because they don't want the change. And this is not a simple transition at all. We're in a different world, and the way the properties of the world are very different. And I'm one of the ones that gets to try to explain to you what the differences are. And I'm in relationship with everybody else because everybody counts. We're in a world where many of us, we call ourselves the critical mass. That is, we're learning what reality is, and that reality depends on us. It gets manifested. That is to say that what we believe is something that reality has to conform to. It's a very heavy thing when you realize that your thoughts and the thoughts of other people around you are creating the reality. I have been posting a lot because I'm trying to get people accustomed to the transition and for them to feel comfortable with it. And I'm working with many people on this. And that's one of the characteristics. That's one of the reasons I get to do this, because I'm used to working in groups. I've done that all my life. I think some of you have looked at the older videos, and one of the important things that we have to do ourselves is we have to be able to distinguish between what's real and what's fake. And a lot of people are now understanding that this situation is going on. The way that we have to start using our brains is something called discernment. We have to realize that we've been lied to, and that many of us refuse to recognize and to admit that we've been duped. And the fact is, it's going to take many, many years and all of us working together for us to understand what the reality is. But enough of us now understand the reality that we're in something called critical mass. And I've told you about this. It's something called the 100-monkey effect. Japanese scientists discovered in the 50s that if they looked at the behavior patterns of a special group, I forget the species of monkey, but these monkeys, one of the younger ones, learned that they should wash sweet potatoes in the ocean to get the sand off. And once enough monkeys of that species, and I say 100-monkey effect, but it could have been more than 100 monkeys, once a critical mass of monkeys learned that they should wash their sweet potatoes in the sand, that knowledge leapt over boundaries to other monkeys of that same species that were not in contact because they were on islands, they were in other places. And this was noticed, and people tried to figure out what this meant. And what it actually means is that the monkeys are thinking in a group. The way the mind works on those monkeys is that their individual minds are like modems, which is to say they are part of the process, but they're all working, their central processing unit is outside of their brain. And what I've learned from one of the other people in the critical mass is that we have actually in our bodies 3 brains. The one that most people realize is in their brain itself, and there's something called the hypothalamus, which is where we're all interconnected. And this is the part of the brain. We actually have 4 parts of the brain. The very earliest part was actually in the time of the dinosaurs, and we call that the reptilian brain. And we have 4 other parts of the brain, and the part that the hypothalamus plays is it evaluates how the other parts of the brain are working. And some people, they do have the hypothalamus, but they don't use it. And scientists can find out who is using all 4 parts of their brain, and the ones that are using the fundamental one, the reptilian brain, they're like Nazis. They're very hierarchical. They have pecking orders, and they march like Nazis. But and everybody has that part of the brain, but when they use the 4th part of the brain, which evaluates how they're doing, that's when people have empathy. That's when people are kind. And the other parts of the brain, there's an emotional part, and then there's a rational part. And there are some people who, when they're tested on their intelligence, they think that's the only part. But, you know, people have to be emotionally savvy and in connection with each other. And that's a version of intelligence. Anyway, I'm grappling now with how to communicate with you, because some of you are stuck in the reptilian part of the brain. Most of the politicians are working with their reptilian brain. And as I said, when you do CAT scans, you could actually find out who's using all 4 of their brains. And we should start doing that, because we do need more empathy and we do need more kindness. And the ones that aren't capable of that and don't see themselves, they need to learn. I'm not saying that we should sit in judgment of them, but we certainly don't want them to perpetuate a system which is not an equitable one. For example, our current system, the income is really very skewed. Some people own a lot more than others. They're much richer than others. That's not the kind of world we need to be living in. And the ones that have done that, and they've done that for thousands of years. And I've mentioned in other videos that we know this. We know this from different places, but one of the places we know this is from Moscow State University, where they've gone back and they've looked at the historical records, and they've discovered that all of the documents have been falsified, and that the chronology, it's called Chronologia, this project in Moscow State University. They've discovered that, well, the Middle Ages, that's where Jesus lived. Aristotle and Plato lived in the Middle Ages. And I'm sorry to point fingers, but it is the case that the Jesuits were the ones that falsified the information. And the Russians have discovered that, no, the history is not what the Jesuits say it is. It's as I said, the Middle Ages. That's when the Greek philosophers lived, and things were a lot different. Let me skip ahead to one of the things I wanted to tell you about, and that is how you function in a world where you've been lied to. And many people realize the difference between truth and these lies. And the ones that are lying to us have realized that many of us realize that there are lies. And so they try to confuse us by mixing some truth with lies. And you know that you can't turn back the clock. Truth is truth. And we're all going to have to grapple with the truth. And the transition is, how do we learn this? And my role, I have a role in this. It's because of what some people did at the end of World War II. The Black Pope, Jose Rizal, who was in charge of the world's wealth, was actually, he didn't have any loyalty to the Vatican. The Black Pope is over what's called the White Pope, the actual Pope. The Black Pope is taking direction from families that go way, way back to the time of the pharaohs. And we can figure out when this was because of some of the buildings in the in those times. They've been you can see from the pictures of the earth and the sky, the stars in the sky, how they revolved. You can date the pyramids very accurately. And our history is 10,000 years. And there's something before that history. I've mentioned this in other videos. I've been talking about the cetaceans. Those are the whales and the dolphins. And humanity actually descended from the cetaceans. And we haven't really been kind to the cetaceans, although they're probably as intelligent as we are. We've been poisoning them with what was called, well, there was a power plant in Japan, and they lied to us. They said that this power plant had failed because of a tsunami. It didn't fail because of a tsunami. It failed because the German safety was, for that nuclear power plant, was hacked. The computer system to keep that, it was a sabotage effort. And some of us have now realized this. There have been many different sabotage efforts, but as I said, reality is something that gets influenced by what we know is true. And I was telling you that there are 4 parts of the brain, But there are other organs that function as brains. The heart is one. We're all interconnected from our hearts. And also, I found out recently from a wise person who was telling me this, um, our guts, our intestines are also interconnected. So we're part of a pack. And you can see other animals and birds that function the same way because they, without knowing, they don't crash into each other. I think starlings have this capability. So it's nothing unusual. One of the main things I wanted to talk to you about actually is, well, I've said before that we're not going to talk about spiritual things, and the reason why is because unscrupulous people have been misusing our spirituality to divide and conquer. You just have to look at the number of religious wars to realize how this is done. But there are other things that are dividing us and confusing us besides religion, race, countries, classes, the number of people that are in the elite versus the ones that aren't. And now they're even trying to get women and men to be at each other's throats. And that's actually, that's amusing because, let's face it, most women and men like each other for good reason. So it's really hard. But, and of course, in politics, in the United States, the Democrats and the Republicans, they're just finding all kinds of, and during the Civil War, it was the North and the South. They're just finding all different ways to divide us. But it doesn't work, does it? Because, well, the main reason that it won't work is because if we're all interconnected, and many of us know this, we're all going to be at peace in this transition. And as I said, the reality is being manifest. And my job, I do have a job, I was starting to tell you, my job is to explain to people about this transition, but I'm just one of the pack. One of the last videos that I did, I was criticized because I wasn't perfect. And this is only normal because I'm a real person. And what can I say? Humans are not perfect. But when we all work together, we can help each other to figure out what's what. And that's one of the strengths that I have is I've gotten used to working together with people to figure things out. And I've given you examples. But also, one of the ways that you can discern that I'm telling you the truth is that I'm being consistent over the years, and you can point to the people that I've learned things that have been teaching me. So I've mentioned to you, I had a Hungarian fencing coach, and Bella de taught me never to retreat, and that I shouldn't be intimidated because the best way to win on the fencing strip is to parry and riposte and not to lose your focus. And so what my fencing coach did, I was the captain of the NYU fencing team, so it was drilled into me. what Bella Deshagi taught me was that when there was a commotion going on, I had to focus because that was how I would win. You can't attack and defend at the same time. So what you do is you focus, and when you're under attack, you do something in fencing called parry riposte. So it teaches you to focus. And I was telling you about different groups and discernment. One of the things that's happened over the years is that people have been lying to me to try to get me to to believe that they are entitled to the world's wealth. And I have very strong intuition. That's one of the things I've inherited from my mother. It turns out that the gene for intuition is passed down from the women. So my mother was really quite intuitive, and luckily I inherited that. And so one of the things that protects me is I've learned to act on my intuition, that my intuition is very strong. So I'll do things that I don't have a good reason for, but that I think is important. And this has saved my life many times. What else do I want to tell you? I'm looking now at the time. I have 10 minutes left. So let me tell you some of the things that I've learned from the liars. That's called controlled opposition. They've been trying to tell me that the world's wealth belongs to them, these very rich people, and because I have strong intuition, I've learned that they were lying. And so there was one Wolfgang struck, and then Wolfgang started lying about there's something called, the bonds that were issued by the rich people. They were issued in the 30s. And the interest on those bonds has when interest is charged on money, it grows it grows in leaps and bounds. So those bonds were put into the World Bank and International Monetary Fund at the end of World War II, and they've continued to accumulate interest. So Wolfgang Struck was planning on selling those bonds for not their face value, and that was controlled opposition. Then there was a fellow named Bengt Carlson who told me a lot of truth, and he also mixed up lies. He was trying to support Wolfgang Struck. Well, I knew Wolfgang Struck was controlled opposition because he was trying to sell the bonds for cheap, and then Bengt Carlson was supporting him. Now, Bengt he had worked for the Swedish intelligence, or was it Danish intelligence? In any event, all of the intelligence agencies are all working together. They're all in cahoots. When you talk about controlled opposition, this is something that all of the governments have used, and all of the governments are actually they're part of this. The CIA called it conspiracy theory, but it turns out when the Warren Commission report was, many people realized that this was very improbable, that there was one single bullet that weaved back and forth when Kennedy was assassinated. Well, that's not logical. So many people realized that the Warren report must have been false. And then the CIA started criticizing them and calling them conspiracy theorists. But it turns out that they were just using their logic, and the truth was that John F. Kennedy was assassinated because he had started to access the world's wealth, and he didn't want the U.S. to become weak. And that was the same thing with Lincoln. He tried to issue currency, which was not fake. He tried to issue currency from the wealth of the nations that was deposited in something called the Global Debt Facility. I'm trying not to use technical words because I want everybody to understand what I'm saying. And technical words are a way of creating distance and making it hard for people to understand. Anyway, what I was going to say about what our new reality is it's a lot kinder. And the people that are actually the most supportive of this new reality, they're, as I was telling you, people are immortal. They have immortal souls. And the ones that are the most supportive, they're the people who died, and there's no such thing as total reincarnation, I don't believe. But this is something that we're all going to have to figure out. What I think is going on is that there are pieces of people that are immortal, just like when somebody is schizophrenic, they fragment into 12 different personalities. Well, I think those 12 are the building blocks of the immortal souls. But as I said, I don't pretend to know any of this. This is something that all of us working together are going to have to understand. But I learned about some of the weapons, the very powerful weapons that are being used against us, because the people that are and have remained in power, I call them sometimes the powers that were. I also called them the network of global corporate control, because this is a corporation that's trying to dominate everybody. It's the oldest corporation, and one of the fundamental pieces of that corporation is the Vatican. I'm sorry to say, but that's just the way it is. But anyway, so I was telling you about this group, the people that have died and that are waiting to become people again. They're a very important power behind this transformed reality. But they're not the only ones. The other group that's helping to keep the peace during this transition, that's the military powers of the world. But I'm not talking about the brass. I'm talking about the soldiers, because what's happened is in 2013 there was an attempt to nuke Charleston, and many people could see how that happened because that was in the news, how many people that were part of that security apparatus were fired for no good reason. And then there was another time, which is when there was going to be a first strike of the United States military aircraft against Russia, and that was aborted. It didn't happen, but if it had happened, we would have been in World War III. There are many other flashpoints, but we're managing. We're managing to stay out of World War III, and that's because we're all in this together. I haven't given a title to this video, but I'm sorry if it's a little bit rambling, but as I said, I wanted to speak extemporaneously and to let people know that that we're in a kinder reality. One last point that I want to talk about is the fact that there are very serious weapons that are being used against us by, it's called mind control. It's not working. Some of us can resist this mind control. Some of us continue to be duped, but since enough of us can resist this mind control, we're going to have a kinder reality. And the attempt to dominate us is going to fail. And I've already told you the likelihood that we in the critical mass win, and the crooks, and I know who those crooks are by now. They're descended from people that thought they were entitled to dominate us back in the time of the Egyptian pharaohs. But it's not going to work. It's just not going to work. And I guess the last point I want to make is how do you function when there are people who are subject to mind control? And some of us, and I'm one of them, I can't be hypnotized, and I don't resist mind control totally, but I've gotten enough experience with it that its effect on me is being reduced all the time. And so what I can tell you about is the experience of, some people call it waking up. It's not really waking up. It's just that truth is truth. And you realize that you've been lied to, and you start to recognize the times that you're lied to and the times that that you're not lied to. And it's an effort to learn this, but it's like anything else. It can be learned. And more of us that are used to learning how to function with mind control are going to be teaching the others, just like more of us are going to teach the others how to use all four parts of the brain and to be empathetic. So we're all moving in the direction of a kinder reality because, as I've told you, reality depends on what we think. I'm sorry, I said the last point, but there's one more point I want to mention before we close, and that is about the nature of the universe. And we've been given some very important information, and that information is that light has as its characteristic that it interacts with light. And what does this mean? This means that nobody's going to control us. It means that we're living in a kind universe. It means that human beings are spiritual beings, and it doesn't have anything to do with, well, when I say it doesn't have anything to do, organized religion is helpful, but it's not the only place that we're going to learn what spirituality is. We're going to learn it because of who we are, which is we are people with immortal souls. And yeah, I guess I'll try to talk to you at other points, but the most important thing is that we all speak to each other, and we're doing that. Thank you.
I'm filming.
Well, I want to thank you for paying attention. It's really important that I tell you that I'm so grateful to you, because you're really the most important part of what it is that I'm doing. So thank you again. And I'm not sure if I'm going to do another video, but if I do, till next time.